Hello, Beard Wizard family. Welcome back to Beard Wizard Reviews. I'm your host, Beard Wizard Man, also known as Trevor on social media. Links all of which you can find in the video description below, including ways to support this channel. Biggest way to support us is click that red subscribe button, join the Beard Wizard family, and push us toward 1,000 by next day, or 2,000 by next April. This is a live show. If you guys are familiar with the show, you know what this is. This is a live review show. I talk about various things. I like to focus on indie content creators, mostly music, because it's been the easiest format to do, but I've wanted to branch out, and I've done a couple of interviews with comic book creators, but I really want to review their content, and I want to show you guys more stuff. I used to do written reviews on Frags and Beer back in the day, but I didn't have the time. I didn't really have the time to devote to it, and I found that I was splitting so much of my time between the channel and the website. It just wasn't working out as well. So I wanted to bring this kind of stuff to you now on the channel. So I reached out a couple, actually last week. The response was staggering. I reached out and asked for more content from indie comic creators, and I just got flooded with requests and links and all kinds of stuff. And it's phenomenal because I want to share this stuff with you guys. I want to share this stuff with more people and get more eyes on this work. And that's what we're going to start doing. So I'm going to try to do it on Tuesdays. It really depends because I've actually got to read these. I've got to do a little research and dig into it. It's not like a music review where I can listen to the song a few times and then just talk about it. So I'm going to try to do these once a week, but we'll see if I can land it on Tuesday every week. Anyway, if you're new here, thank you. Be sure to subscribe if you're in the live stream. Say hi if you're watching the recording. Leave me a comment. Bear with me. This is my first time doing this type of format. I think I've got it figured out, but some transitions may be wonky. Some displays may be a little strange. I'm even trying to figure out how I'm going to display the comic book in a way that you guys can see it and appreciate it. And I think I figured that out. But again, bear with me as I sort of muddle my way through this live presentation and review of the comic book of BounD. So we're going to take a look at BounD today. It's a comic book created by Matt Forsyth, Therese Lewis, and Kevin Lill. It is written by Matt and Therese, and art is by Matt Forsyth. I read through this comic. I read through the first couple of volumes. There's actually 6 volumes, I believe, in this. They sent me a link to the trade paperback, so full disclosure, I should say up front. They did send me a review copy, so that you guys know that that is a required disclosure. By the way, if you guys are getting reviews or you're watching reviews and they do not disclose how they acquired the product they're reviewing, that should be a red flag to you. Did they buy it themselves? Did they get it sent to them? Did they pay for it? Did somebody pay them for the review? All of those disclosures are required by the SEC, and I push that as an independent writer and as my own publisher of my own work. I've had people ask me to review my stuff, but they want to charge me, and then they don't disclose that they're charging for reviews. That's unethical. So keep that in mind, guys, when you're doing reviews, when you're looking at reviews or watching reviews, they need to disclose how they acquired said product. So that's one of the things you're going to see on this show. I got to try to remember to do that. They sent me a review copy. All right, so this book came out 2009, I believe, because the copyright 2009, or at least that's when they started the first publication. It is available on, oh shoot, it flew out of my head, the website that it's available on. I got some notes here. It is available on globalcomics.com, so we're going to take a look at some of that stuff here in a little bit. I wanted to give you some background of the comic, and again, pardon the transitions because things may look a little weird as I try to sort of bounce through these different windows of information. But I reached out to the Twitter account who sent me the link. I believe it's run by Matt, from what I've seen. Asked him what inspired the creation of the comic. We'll talk about the comic, the art, and the story here in a minute, but I wanted to know, where did it come from? What inspired this comic? Because I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to know more. He says, visually, BounD is inspired by the manga and anime I grew up with in the late 80s, early 90s, Akira, Ghost in the Shell, The Guyver, Battle Angel, etc. Fantastic inspiration, because those are great works of animation and I guess we would call them comics, but manga over there. Have Western influence as well, like Frank Frazetta, good choice. Bernie Wrightston, H.R. Geiger, awesome. Plus a lot of contemporary comic book artists like Mark Silvestri, hitting all the right notes as far as where the inspiration for the work came from, and I can see it. You can see it in the work that's where it came from. Story-wise, inspired by old sci-fi shows like Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, Star Trek, the original series, Random Weird Stuff, and so on. He goes on to talk about H.P. Lovecraft influencing the story, specifically from BounD. And he says BounD wouldn't even exist without the concepts that are in From Beyond. And again, something else you can definitely see in the work. And then classic literary influences like Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, and Jane Austen. And he says Therese and him have some overlap in things they like Dune, Twilight Zone, and Star Trek, but she's more well-read than he is, which is good. I mean, Therese being the writer in this and Matt being the artist, obviously an artist, I think, should have influence and should be able to pull from literary works as well as artistic works, because at the end of the day, us authors, we paint pictures with words, and it doesn't always land perfectly, but if you have a good imagination, if you can visualize like an artist does while you read, and the author is good at giving you that description to build the picture, I can imagine that there's a lot of literature out there that influences artists, especially if they're very descriptive, if they're good at building that picture in that world. So I can definitely see that as being an influence. Now there is an interview, and I'll put that in the link with the video description below. There's an interview about how the comic was created and how it came about, more of a full story from Matt, so you can read that. And I forgot to link it, but I will link it here coming up. So BounD itself, let me pull that back up, and we're actually going to see if I can do this right. I'm going to try to do this right and blow this up so that you guys can see it almost fully. Okay, so BounD is mostly black and white. You can tell it's a very manga influenced sort of art and story. One of the things I really liked is how clean I found the art to be. Very, very smooth lines, very clean work. Not a lot of clutter, not a lot of junk. I try to read a lot of indie comics because, again, I grew up with comics. I grew up with the big publishers. I grew up with Marvel and Image and DC, and over the years, I've just found less and less appealing about them. And I've really, being an indie author myself, I've really wanted to try to push more independent creators. Not just through my own sort of entertainment sphere, but through to other people as well. I think it's important. And so I've seen a lot of independent comics, and unfortunately you run into, just like with independent authors, you run into some stuff that's not as good of quality. Sometimes it's because they don't have the skills yet, or they don't have the funding, they don't have the right programs, they don't have the right, whatever it might be. There's a lot of factors that could impact that. But BounD is, you can see from the cover here, very nice line work, very clean shading, not a lot of clutter, even though you've got sort of a smoke and explosion kind of feel going on here. I keep moving through that too fast. But when you get to the first panels, the panels are great. I love the sort of low res to the city backdrop there. I think that works so well in black and white because you can't use color to differentiate things like signs or anything. So when you're working in black and white, and I'm speaking completely from the stance of a layman here, but when you're working in black and white art, it seems to me that the more detail you put in when you don't have color to use, the messier it can get, the blurrier, the more indistinct things can get. And so going with this more, I guess, intentionally indistinct, and it's also not the focus. You can see when we get to the second panel there, the focus is the character Natalia. And so the city backdrop works, and I love the backgrounds that they use in these, because while the backgrounds are nice to have, they should never be the focus. And I think sometimes indies and even professional artists, their backgrounds become so cluttered and so messy that they get distracting. And we don't have that here. We don't have that problem here. I like the clean line work. The anatomy is fantastic. The character looks good. And then we start the story here from, getting off of the art into the story. We start the story in a dream sequence, and I'm not going to get too much into it because I don't want to give the story away. And I'm not going to give the end away, and I'm not going to tell you everything that happens, obviously, in the book. So we're not going to go through this panel by panel. I just want to show you some examples of the art so that you guys can see a couple panels. Because if you're anything like me, paying money for something that you don't get to look at is not always appealing. So ordering comics online has always been something I had never really did much of, because I want to be able to pick it up. I want to be able to look at the art. I want to be able to flip through it before I buy it. So I do want you guys to get an idea of what we're talking about with the art. You can see the line work on the creatures. Fantastic. Again, we got good line work with the backgrounds. You can tell where your heroes are. You can tell where your monsters are. Everything looks good. Action sequences flow and they look like movement. That's another thing that some indies, and just from inexperience, even some professional comics don't translate movement well in still images. It's hard to tell what your characters are doing when you don't have the advantage of moving pictures. So the artwork looks great. Everything looks fantastic through the first dream sequence. I love the character. I love the hero look that she's got going on. It's kind of like almost like an Ion Flux sort of look, but not quite. It's still got its own uniqueness, which is good. And the monsters are great. I love the monsters. And then we've got Seth, our demon here. Hold on. Just wanted to close the door. There was a little more noise going on out there, and get a quick drink. So that ends our introduction, and that's about as far as I'm going to go. That ends our introduction with the thing. Let me see if I can transition back now to the. I don't know how to put it back. Sorry, boys and girls. I'm just gonna do it the hard way. Okay, so anyway, like I said, bear with me. This is a live show, and I'm trying to figure out the transitions as we go. So that's pretty much the art. It's fantastic. I loved looking at this book, and that's one of the important things about a comic book is it's not just the story. It needs a good story, but it needs good art too. It should be pleasing to flip through. It should be nice to look at, and it should convey your motion, your action. It should convey the story. Hey, I just looked at that. That's not a half bad shrinking transition, even though I just dragged to the corner of the picture. Anyway, live show, boys and girls. Welcome to it. So for the story, I found the story to be intriguing right off the bat. We get these notes of sort of gothic supernatural horror in a dystopian, and I'm reading from my notes if you wonder, from a dystopian sort of post-apocalyptic backdrop. The story's about a woman, Natalia, who can see or is seeing monsters from another world or dimensions, along with her including her protector, Seth, who is this winged demon we saw there in the last panel. They are stuck in a city like everybody else, and around the city is nothing but wasteland. There is a conversation where they talk about going somewhere else, and there's nowhere else to go, they say. So it's similar to Dread, in a sense, the Dread comic, where everybody's sort of locked in the city, and as far as we know, everything outside the city is just nothing but waste. Yeah, and I agree. I love the black and white. I think black and white illustration works very well in comic books, especially comic books of certain styles, like there is a series of comic books out there from Alterna and Fubar Comics. It's this zombie they're all different kinds of zombie themed stories, and those work really well in black and white. The Walking Dead is very famous black and white. What's the other one? There's they made a movie about it, and I'll think of it as I talk. But some comics work very well in black and white. Manga is very traditionally almost always black and white. So I do enjoy that, and it allows you to create the story and the art without worrying about if you're gonna. I mean, sometimes the art is ruined by the color. So you don't have to worry about that with this. Going into more of the story, they give you a good hook right at the front. You get this dream sequence that sort of hooks you. It wants you to know you want to know what's going on. It makes you question what you're about to read, because you're thinking that it's starting off with this great action, everything's, she's about to be killed or whatever, and the demon saves her, and then she wakes up. So you're wondering right away after like just a couple of pages, what's going on? Is she dreaming? Did those events happen? Did they not happen? And that also sets a great world building early, which to me is important for indies and, professionals alike when you're building a new world. It's one thing when you jump into an X-Men comic or a Fantastic Four comic or an Avenger comic. Almost everybody in the world at this point knows what to expect from the world building of, your typical Marvel comic book. But when you're an independent, you're creating your own world, you've got to do the world building early, and it's got to be concise, and it's got to set the stage without too much fluff. And you've got to do it quick because you don't want to waste your entire first issue not only setting the hook for the story, but building the world. And they do a great job here, the team with BounD. Not only do they set the hook early with the dream sequence, and right away you want to know what the hell's going on, but the next few panels are then Natalia going through sort of a typical day, her leaving her apartment, feeding her cat. She goes to work. We find out about her job. We find out about the city, and then she goes home. So we get in just a few pages, just a couple of pages, the world. That's where we learn that sort of this dystopian futuristic setting, but things aren't great. We learn that in the world building. We learn that they're stuck in a city that they really can't leave because there's nowhere to go. We learn all of that right away, and they don't waste a lot of pages on that, which is good. They set an interesting backdrop without wasting time. Important when you're doing this kind of indie work. Even as an indie author, that's important for me. Like, I write in a unique world. I need to tell the reader about that world early, so they know what to expect. And I can, of course, lay breadcrumbs and build on that. I have a little more leeway because I'm not using the comic book format. But I still need to set the stage early. I still need to let the reader know what to expect, what's coming, what they're getting into early, because otherwise I'm going to lose them. They're not going to know what the rules are. They're not going to know what to expect from the story. They're not even going to know what kind of world they're in. And you don't want to leave them wondering, or you'll lose them. The first chapter sets the stage. When it gets to the end, you have a lot of questions, which is great. Like, they sent me the whole trade paperback, or the entire, the word I'm looking for, graphic novel. There you go. They sent me the whole thing, so I was able to then read on to issue 2. But I can imagine if you read issue 1, if I stopped there, which I did, I stopped there and I took some notes and wrote down my thoughts. I wanted to know what's next, and that's another important part of like a comic book that's done in issues. Let me get a drink here. Talking so much, I'm thirsty. So, sorry. It's important in your comic book that runs in issues because just like the chapters of a book, you want them to flip the next page. You want them to pick up the next issue. So you want to make sure that you end your first and every issue, just like you end every chapter, with a reason to keep going. And that's where we get here. We get to the end of it, and we want to know what's going on. We want to know who the creature is who saved her. We want to know why doesn't she remember what happened before, because she's lost her memory. You have all these questions when you get to the end of the first issue. And you need the answers. So it makes you want to go pick up the next one. It makes you want to learn what's going on. Next. Ed says, a big fan of Heavy Metal magazine. Every issue, wow, every issue from 77 through 98. Damn, son. That's a lot of Heavy Metal comics. And again, there's another good one. What, for a long time, Heavy Metal, if I remember right, was almost exclusively black and white. And on newsprint, it wasn't until last couple of decades that they went mostly color on the glossy paper and all of that stuff. I remember reading in the early to mid 90s, reading Heavy Metal. I didn't get into it until I was a little older, and yeah, a lot of black and white and some great stories that you don't need color comics to deliver good stories. So that's how the first issue ends. Makes you want to know more, and that's fantastic. I would say, boys and girls, that BounD is a great comic. It's a great indie comic. It is available from globalcomics.com. I put a link in the video description below so you can get to it. You can read it for free online on Global Comics, or you can download a PDF for 99 cents for most issues. I think one issue, which is a longer one, is like $1.99, and then you can get the entire book for $6. I encourage you, if you can, to please purchase the PDF. Even if you read the copies online, purchase the PDF. Even, if you can spare it. Indie comics, indie writers, indie artists, it's hard. It is a grind all the time to try to get your content in front of people, to try to get people to even read it, to care about it, to review it. That's why I'm doing this. I know how hard it is to get reviews. It sucks. It's horrible. People don't want to do it. Even people who read your book and tell you how much they love it, you still can't get them to go on Amazon or Goodreads and even mark a couple stars. It's so difficult to get people to talk up your work, especially when you're independent. So every little bit helps, even if you just want to share the link with your friends. If you can't afford to buy the comic, go read it. Go to globalcomics.com. I think it's in the description below, but it's like /BounD on Global Comics. And again, I'll link the interview, the fuller description from Matt and Therese about how it all came to be. I'll link that below too. But please go there, read it, take a look at it. If you like it, consider purchasing it. If you can't afford to purchase it, share it with your friends, tell them about it. Maybe they can go pick up a copy, but support these guys. This is a great comic. We need to see more from this team, and hopefully we will. And yeah, that's about it. I definitely went longer than I thought I would. So tell me what you guys think about the new show. Not really new show, the new addition to Beard Wizard Reviews. Again, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this live, and hopefully the next issue or the next episode will run a little smoother. Thank you, Ed, and everybody else who was here. Make sure you subscribe, share it with your friends, tell everybody what you think about the show. Get people out here. Ed, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a good format, good review. Well done. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That does mean a lot to me because I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here. Every day, every time I do a review, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just hoping that you guys are entertained for the time you're here. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Share it with your friends. Come back for more. Come back tomorrow for day 6 of the Battle of the Beer Advent calendars and another episode of Beard Wizard Reviews, probably. I know Outbreak and I are going to start picking up Tarkov again on Twitch before Wipe, which is soon. So if you guys follow the gaming content, we got more coming. Thank you, Ed, everybody else. You guys rock.